at the Principles of Accounts May June 2020 Paper 1. Now, of course, this is in preparation for your Principles of Accounts Paper 1 examination. Alright, guys, let's jump into it one time. May June 2020 POA Paper 1. Let's have a go. Now, question 1. A non trading organization and mainly concerned with proper answer should be D, providing various services for its members. Good. Question 2. The term accounting refers to C. Recording, analyzing, and interpreting of business information. Now, question 3, guys. Rent expense, which is still owing at the end of the period, must be debited to a profit and loss account and shown in the balance sheet as a liability. What accounting concept does it represent? Now, when you actually show amount owing as a liability, that obviously will be your accruals concept. Now, question 4, guys. During a year, a company bought stationery for $220 and used $120 worth of it. What figure will be posted to your profit and loss account to represent the expenditure for stationery? Correct answer should be B, 120. Now, a small little T account on the side just to show you guys how that went down. Stationery is the name of the expense account. You would have had to debit the stationery with $220 bank because they actually spent money on that. Now remember, you used 120 words. The amount of 120 will be hitting your income statement as your expenditure. Our balance carried on of 100 going to show up as your prepayment. So yeah, guys, answer should be B, $120. Good. Moving on to question 5. What is the total amount for the assets? So now that you read the question, you go back to your data, you look at your assets and see what your answer should be. Well, motor vehicle is an asset, receivable is an asset, together with buildings. Therefore, your total assets should be $14,000. Question 6. Which of the following list of current assets is arranged in the order of liquidity? Now, we all know that cash is your most liquid asset, and the only answer that starts off with cash is B. Therefore, B obviously is your answer. Cash, bank, prepayments, accounts receivable, and then your inventory. Great job. Now, moving on to question 7, guys. Let's have a look. The summarized position of Foster & Scott Limited at 6th of March 2015 was as follows. What was the capital of Foster & Scott Limited at 6th of March? Alright, so you're asking us for capital. Now we all know what is the equation for capital. Capital is equal to your assets minus liabilities. So what we had to do here was to total up your assets. In this case, assets would have been current and non-current in yellow, 300,000. Liabilities, current liabilities and non-current liabilities, 60 plus 50, which is 210. So 300,000 minus 210,000 going to give us B, 90,000. Good job. Moving on to question 8. What does the figure 529,800 represent? So they gave us a little formula up here. Item 8 refers to the following information. A calculation to determine gross profit percentages as follows. 185,530 divided by 529,800 multiplied by 100 to give us 35.02%. What does the figure 529,800 represent? This is a formula to show gross profit percentage, which is gross profit divided by sales, therefore E, sales. Question 9. The following assets were found on the statement of financial position of a retailer. What would be the best order if these assets were arranged in order of permanence? Permanence means most permanent to least permanent. Proper answer there should be D, buildings, motor van, fixtures, receivables, bank, and cash. Cash obviously being your most least permanent or your most liquid asset. Good. All right, question 10. Which of the following items would not appear in a cash book? Cash book records actual money received, actual money being spent. So B, which was goods sold on credit, which did not involve any monetary amount in terms of payments or receipts, should be there, not in your cash book. So B. All right, question 11. In a cooperative society, daily affairs are administered by whom? Well, in a cooperative, the daily affairs, persons who run the daily operations, will those persons who are elected or appointed to do so. Great job, guys. Time for us to move on to question 12. Credit notes issued for goods returned by a customer will be entered firstly in the A. Retained inwards book. Definitely, guys. Totally correct. Now, question 13. Mrs. Hoyt, a grocer, bought a computer on credit from Tan Company. In Mrs. Hoyt's books, which the following journal entries will be made for this transaction. But if she's purchasing a computer on credit, the most obvious answer there should be debit computer and credit Tan Company. Nice. Question 14, guys. Moving on to the asset test ratio. This question is asking us for the formula for asset test ratio. So let's see what the suggested answer should be. The asset test ratio, as you all know, is the current assets less the inventory divided by current liabilities. And the best answer there will always be A. Net current assets less inventory divided by current liabilities. So less inventory available to pay current liabilities, A. Good. Moving on to question 15, guys. Which of the following expenses, which of the following accounts is not nominal? Now, nominal, as we all know, will include all the expenses on revenue accounts. And therefore, commission is a revenue, carriage inwards is an expense, discount allowed is an expense. Therefore, the account that is not an expense or a revenue account here is furniture. Answer A. Furniture is in fact a real account, which is an asset account. Great job. Moving on to question 16, guys. Let's have a look at question 16. Question 16 asks us, which of the following accounts are usually transferred to your trading and profit and loss account? Trading and profit and loss account is your income statement. Well, items that will be transferred to your income statement include commission received, rent, and purchases. Why we didn't choose any others? Well, remember drawings. Drawings will not appear in an income statement. Drawings will normally go to your statement of financial position. So drawings is out. And well, if you look at the suggested answer D, we have furniture, which also goes to your statement of financial position and not your income statement. Good. Question 17, guys. With the following items is a capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is money being spent to acquire fixed assets. D, purchase of machinery is the best option there. Question 18, in which, in order to avoid writing numerous checks for small amounts, a firm may set up a, obviously you guys know this one, a petty cash fund. Question 19. Mrs. Abel and Mrs. Blue purchased goods on credit valued at $50 and $75 respectively from Mr. Kane. Another customer paid Mr. Kane cash for goods amounted to $550. Mr. Kane took goods at cost for himself amounted to $500. Which of the following figures represent the total in Mr. Kane's sales account? Well, sales, as you all know, is made up of both credit and cash sales. So 50 plus 75 plus 550 should give us $675. Great job, guys. The amount that Mr. Kane took would have been drawings that will not be part of the sales account. Question 20. Mr. Ram, a shoemaker, bought a motor van, paid 11,000 cash. What should his double entry be? Well, we all know debit motor van, credit cash. Answer A. Question 21. In Mrs. Lowe's ledger, an entry on the debit side of drawings, an entry on the credit side of bank account means what? Alright guys, let's talk through this. Let's figure this thing out. Debit side of drawings, credit side of the bank account. It means that she's taking money out of the business bank account. And if it's going to drawings, it means she's taking this money out of the business bank account for personal use. Answer there should be D. She uses money from her business's bank account for personal use. Great job. Question 22, guys. K. Khan, a debtor of A&B Enterprise, settles his debt of 120 less 2.5% discount by check. How should the double entry be recorded in the books of A&B Enterprise? Alright guys, so A&B Enterprise is receiving money from Khan. Therefore, we will debit our bank and credit Khan. And the account that we're going to debit again will be discount allowed because A&B is giving Khan a discount. So from A&B's perspective, this is discount allowed. So answer should be C. Debit bank, debit discount allowed, and credit Khan. Time for us to move on to question 23. The formula for calculating working capital will be current assets less current liabilities. Good job there, guys. Moving on to question 24. Item 24 refers to the following statement of financial position. What is the total amount for your non-current assets? If you look very closely, non-current assets will include land and building, motor van, and fixtures and fittings. These are our fixed assets, guys. 9,000 plus 5,000 plus 600 going to give us 14,006. Answer C. Coming up to question 25. What is the gross profit of the hardware store? Now, this is probably the longest question in this paper in terms of calculations. Item 25 refers to the following data, which are taken from the records of a hardware store at the end of the financial year. We have sales, we have sales returns, we have discount allowed, opening stock, closing stock, purchases, and then purchase returns. Now, this is for you guys to be able to prepare a trading account extract to show the gross profit. Now, in a trading account, you'll normally have your net sales, subtract your cost of goods sold to give you a gross profit. Discount allowed doesn't play a part here because discount allowed is an expense and that shows up in the profit and loss part. But we are looking at the trading account part to show gross profit. So one more time, net sales, subtract cost of goods sold to give you gross profit. Now to get your net sales, sales less sales returns to get your net sales, and well to get your cost of goods sold, it will be purchases less purchase returns, give you net purchases, add that onto your opening stock minus the closing stock, and that will give you the cost of goods sold. Now, just to illustrate to you guys, this here is your working. Check it out. Sales revenue less sales returns to give you net sales, opening stock. Then you have purchases less purchase returns, give you net purchases. So opening stock add on to your net purchases, give you the cost of goods available for sale. Subtract closing stock from that to give a cost of goods sold, and then simply net sales subtract cost of goods sold to give you a gross profit as $31,645. There we go, guys. Awesome job. As I said, this is probably the longest calculation, but once you guys knew your workings and your format, you should be fine. Great. Time for us to move on to question 26. Now, question 26, what is the net profit percentage to the nearest whole number? Net profit divided by sales multiplied by 100. Yeah, guys, that is your equation. So you had to work with the net profit from this data. Let's look at the net profit. Net profit, gross profit, subtract expenses is going to give you the net profit, guys. Let's see what we have. The gross profit is 12,000. Yes, that's great. But then we do have discount received, which is an additional form of income, which must be added on to a gross profit. So we're going to add that on. And then we subtract our expenses, which is rent and discount allowed. So 12,000, add 2,000, that'll be 14,000. Subtract 3,000, subtract another 4,000. That should give us our net profit figure of $7,000. 7,000 divided by net sales of 30 multiplied by 100, that should give us the answer of 23%. Good job. Good. Time for us to move on to question 27. Question 27, we have some data to work with. Books of J. Sami. They're asking us the current ratio. Current ratio, as we all know, is current assets divided by current liabilities. So let's look at your data. Let's get those current assets. Current assets includes inventory, receivables, and your cash. So 1100 plus 5 plus 2 can give us 18. Current liabilities include bank overdraft and payables. There we go. Put together that equation, our answer should be 1.64 to 1. Nicely done, guys. Time for us to move on to question 28. On January 1st, 2016, 10,000 was paid towards an advertising campaign. Of this amount, 7,000 was used. What was the amount prepaid? Well, if 10,000 was paid, we used up the value of 7,000. It means $3,000 would have been prepaid. Question 29. Depreciation in accounting terms can be defined as what? Well, depreciation is normally defined as the value of the asset that's used up for an accounting period. Answer should be C. Question 30. To which the following accounts will depreciation of office machines be transferred? Depreciation is transferred to your profit and loss account because it is part of your expense. Question 31. Working capital of P. Young and Sons is 15.5 and current assets is 16.5. What is the total of the current liabilities? Well, guys, you all know the working capital calculation. Current assets minus current liabilities to give us working capital. So we put those values together and work backwards, and realize that the answer should be $1,000. Current assets of 16.5 minus current liabilities of 1,000 to give us a working capital of 15.5. Good job. Question 32. Another question asking us about working capital. We already know the formula. Current assets minus current liabilities give us working capital. So let's see what the current assets should be. Current assets should be cash. It should be prepaid insurance. So that's to the 800 right here. Current liabilities should be rent owing, creditors, and bank overdraft. Good. So 1800. So to the 800 minus 1800 to give us 2000. That is our working capital. Not bad, guys. Time for us to move on to question 33. Now, this question is a kind of tricky question here. What amount will be charged for the provision for doubtful debts for the year ended 31st December? Kind of tricky because your wording wasn't too clear. Let's have a look. Well, the opening amount that we have is $700. You're seeing that at the top. Now, the receivables as 1st of January is 3,000. The receivables at 31st December 25,000. The provision for doubtful debts is calculated at a rate of 2% of receivables. So the 2% of receivables 2% by 25,000, guys. We're looking at the year end. So 2% by 25,000 is $500. Currently, the provision stands at 700. So if we were to move the provision from 700 to 500, the amount to be charged to the provision for doubtful debts account would be $200. And this is actually like a reduction, but it's the amount that will be charged to the provision for doubtful debts as a reduction because you're moving from 7 to 5. So $200 is your answer. Question 34. How does an increase in bad debts affect the sole trader's financial statement? A bad debt is an expense, and expenses will definitely affect your profit. In this case, increase will in bad debts will decrease your net profit. C as your answer. Moving on to question 25, or actually 35. A company's rent account had an opening balance of 2,000. During the year, 6,000 was paid for rent. At the end of the year, there's a closing debit balance of 1,500 in the account. All right, let's put together a rent account pretty quickly. Let's see how these entries would appear. So rent, we had an opening balance of 2,000. That'll be here. Balance brought down 2,000. Looks good. During the year, 6,000 was paid. Therefore, you'd normally credit your bank and debit your rent. So let's debit your rent. Bank 6,000 was paid. Good. And at the end of the day, there's a closing debit balance of 1,500 as well. Right, guys, I'm going to finish off this down here. Now, when you say closing debit balance, remember how you had an opening debit balance of 2,000? You now have a closing debit balance of 1,500. So that'll be here. Balance brought down 1,500. Now, of course, for you to have a balance brought down, you must have a balance carried down value. So come up here now. 1,500. So now we simply have the balance of this account. 6 plus 2 is 8,000. 8,000. 8,000 minus 15 gonna give us 65. And this here, guys, is the amount that's going to go to income statement. There we go. Answer B. All right, great job, guys. Time for us to move on to question 36. Mr. Brown wishes to increase, M. Brown wishes to increase her provision for doubtful debts from 8% to 10%. Accounts receivable at the end of the year totaled 10,000, while the balance sheet provision stood at 800. Which of the following entries would be correct to record the provision for the year? All right, guys, the provision is currently 800. It has to move to 10% of the AR figure at the end of the year, which is 10,000. So 10% of 10,000 is $1,000. So it has to move from 800 to 1,000. So the movement there is a $200 movement, and this is an increase. So to increase your provision for doubtful debts, you normally debit your profit and loss account, credit the provision for doubtful debts with the value of 200. There we go, guys. Nicely done. Let's move on to question 37. Now, in question 37, the balances of the asset accounts of the Payroll Club as at 30th June was as follows. We do have some assets here. They're asking us for the accumulated fund. Now, accumulated fund is just another name to say capital. Capital, as we all know, is assets minus liabilities. So, in this case, for this non-profit organization, accumulated fund will be assets subtract liabilities. Remember, all of these are assets here, so it's going to add them up. Total 9897 for question 37. Question 38. A. Jones by mistake debited C Hall's account instead of F Hall, which the following corrects this mistake. This is an error of commission, entered the wrong person's account. So he made a mistake by debiting C Hall instead of F Hall. So all those things to credit C Hall and debit F Hall. Answer should be C. Good. Question 39. What sum of money is represented by 1? Now, guys, we are seeing a little T account here, which is, in fact, like a balance sheet. This is supposed to balance. Debit side must be equal to a credit side. A credit side totals $6,000. Debit side is missing a value. Currently, debit side is $4,000. So what we need to take it up to $6,000 should be $2,000. B is your answer. Now, question 40. Which of the following accounts is represented by 2? 2 here, guys, this area here. Now, if this is a representation of your balance sheet, remember one side will be assets, the other side is capital and liabilities. So therefore, payables is liabilities, therefore 2 should represent your capital. Good job, C. Time for us to move on to question 41. Now, question 41 is a question that really not supposed to show up inside here because this is a subscriptions to account which is no longer in your current syllabus. However, with the upcoming changes, it may come back in your syllabus, but right now, not there. But anyhow, we can still have a look. How much was collected in subscriptions in a year? This is falling under your non-profit organizations. So, number of members 50, annual subscriptions $50, subscription owing at the beginning of the year 450, subscriptions owing at the end of the year 150. How much was collected during the year? Right, guys? Well, 450 was the amount owing at the start of the year. We did expect to collect 2,500 number of members by annual subscriptions 25. So 450 owing plus 2,500 being collected, but then 150 was still owing at the end of the year. So the total amount collected should have been 2,800. 450 given to us at the start plus the 25 during the year minus 150 still owing 2,800. C as our answer. Time for us to move on to question 42. Mr. Miguel's capital was 40,000 on January 1st, and on 31st December, 85,000. So you have opening capital, we have closing capital. He withdrew 1,000 in inventory during the year, so we have drawings as well. What is his profit for the year? Now you guys remember the equation. Opening capital, add net profit, less drawings, going to give you closing capital. Once you now rearrange that equation, I should say, you'll now be able to work out the net profit as 46,000. There we go, guys. Check it out. Moving on to question 43. W, X, Y, and Z are partners sharing profits and losses in proportion to their capital. The capital of each partner is shown below. What would be Z's share of profit of 7,200? Let's have a look. Now, if you add up all these amounts of capital, 3, 2, 1, and 3, you're going to get 900. All right, so total capital is 900. Z's contribution is 300. So his ratio is 3 over 9. Right? I'm going to multiply that by 7,200. And your value there should now be 2,400A. Great job, guys. Nicely done. Time for us to move on to question 44. Which of the following accounts shows how profits and losses are shared amongst partners? Well, to show profits and losses shared amongst partners, that should be an appropriation account. Good. Time for us to move on one more time to question 45. Mr. Smith does not keep proper accounting records. He began his business with 10,000 in the bank. He uses his vehicle and buildings with 6,000 and 15,000 respectively as part of his business. Customers owe him 4,000. He withdrew 1,500 for personal use and owed suppliers $2,000. What's the closing capital of his business? Well, closing capital is opening capital less drawings, so you have closing capital, but to get your opening capital, you have to actually work out assets minus liabilities. So guys, let's check it out. He began his business with 10,000. The 10,000, that is 10,000 he started his business with. That is money in the bank account, plus the vehicle of 6, plus the building of 15. All those are assets. You add up all those. Then debtors of 4,000. Add that on as well. So all those are the assets there. 10 plus 6 plus 15 plus 4. Then you subtract the liability of 2,000. That's going to give you the opening capital. Then subtract your drawings of 1,500, and they're going to get your closing capital as C, 31,005. Good job. Now, question 46, which of the following features is associated with private limited companies? Private limited companies, as we all know, shares are not sold publicly. Good. Question 47, capital at the start of the period was 20,000, at the end of the period was 20,005. The net profit was 6,005. How much money was withdrawn for the period? Now again, put down the equation and the formula that we guys know. Opening capital, add net profit, less drawings, going to give you closing capital. Once you put in our values here, we'll now be able to safely work back to get our drawings figure, which should come back to $4,000. There we have it. Question 48. According to the Partnership Act, if there is no deed of partnership, the amount of profit to be received by each partner should be equal. A, guys. Great. Moving on to question 49. What is the inventory at the end of January? They're asking us for closing stock, guys. Well, if the opening stock is 15 and the purchases is 12, that meant we had $2,700 worth of goods here available for sale. What we sold was 1,400. Therefore, what we did not sell would have been our 1,300. So closing stock, D, guys. Question 50, which of the following items is not recorded in the appropriation of partnership? You guys know. Answer should be C, drawings. Drawings only shows up in the current account. Question 51, when a company declares a dividend of 15%, dividend warrant of a shareholder owning 1,500 $1 ordinary shares will be $1,500 by 15%, $225. There we go. Moving on to question 52, which is another long question. Let's look at the requirement. How much money should Jane receive as her share of her profits? Right, so now we have a full partnership question where Jane and Mary are in partnership sharing profits in a ratio of 3:2. The following balances are taken from their books: net profits, interest on capital, salary, drawings, interest on drawings. How much money should Jane receive as her share of profits? Right, first of all, we need to actually determine the ratio. Jane and Mary, 3:2. Jane is getting 3, therefore Jane is getting 3/5. So that's clear. Next, we need to determine what is the balance of profits to be shared. Right, now you guys know how to work this out. To work out your balance of profit, it'll be a net profit. Good. Subtract your interest on capital. Subtract your salary. Add interest on drawings. So once you put together those calculations, net profit, subtract the interest on capitals, subtract your salary, add the interest on drawings, you're going to get 18,060. 3/5, which is Jane's share, by $18,060 is going to give us B 10,836. Good. Remember, drawings doesn't show up in the appropriation account. Drawings will actually show up in the current account. So there we go, guys. Good job. All right, question 53. P. Amos is employed by a construction company at the rate of $7 per hour. During the week of 6 April, he worked his basic hours of 40. Income tax due is $20. He's liable to pay Social Security contributions of 5% of his gross pay. What is his net pay? Well, payroll question. Basic wage, $7 by 40, going to give us $280. 5% of this will be going towards his Social Security contributions. That's $14. And another $20 has to be paid. So basic pay of $280, subtract his deductions of $14 and $20 is going to give him a net pay of $246. Good. Moving on to question 54. What's the maximum amount of capital a company can raise by selling shares to the public? Well, you all know this is your authorized share capital. Question 55. If the issue is fully subscribed, how much capital did the company raise? right? So companies selling ordinary shares, 200,000 ordinary shares by $2 each, that's $400,000. 5% preference shares, 10,000 by $5, that's $50,000. So 400,000 plus 50,000 is going to give us 450,000 D as our answer. Question 56. Which of the following result on opening stock of raw materials are added to a net purchases? Opening stock of raw materials at the net purchases is going to give us the raw materials available for use. Good job. Moving on to question 57, another payroll question. Total income tax deducted from Teresa Ali, guys. Let's have a look. Teresa is an employee of a bank. Her monthly salary is $3,500. She's getting overtime of $800. Income tax rates 25% on every dollar above $2,000 of her monthly salary. So $2,000 is in fact her personal allowance. She's not paying tax on that. She's paying 30% on the overtime as well. So let's see how much money in tax she's paying on the basic salary. 3,500 subtract the personal allowance of 2,000 multiplied by 25%, $375. Then tax on the overtime, 30% by 800 can give us 240. 375 plus the 240 will give us a $615. Good. Question 58, guys. Which of the following items is not considered a source document for payroll? Well, B. Medical certificate is definitely not a source document to be used for payroll. Question 59. What's the balance per bank statement? Well, there's a bank reconciliation format being tested. If you do have your balance as per cash book, you normally add your unpresented checks onto that, subtract your lodgement, and that will give the balance as per bank statement. In this case, our answer should be $530. Finally, in question 60, net profit of the firm was shown as $1,600. It was later discovered that discounts received were undercast by 10 and purchases were understated by 36. Was the correct net profit? Now, discount received is a form of income. If this was understated, you'd have to add that back on. So 1,600 add on to the $10. And well, if purchases were understated, it meant that the purchases was money being spent too little. So you have to subtract this here. So 1,600 add the 10, subtract the 6, that should give us a value of 1,574. A is our answer. And guys, this brings us to the end of our examination. This brings us to the end of May June 2020 POA Paper 1.